Forward on this computer. Right on. Welcome everybody. My name is Bubba Riggins. I am the youth support coordinator here at Two Feathers Native Family Services. And so a little bit about what I do professionally. I work with our wraparound. We call it our Making Relatives team. Normally I'm in Hoopaw, but about 4 or 5 days a week. But because I live on the coast, I've been kind of keeping back and just working from home. But I'm glad that we have these speaker series going, so that way we can kind of reach out to our community, and we're even reaching out to communities from further away. So I would like to welcome you today to the first part of our food sovereignty series. So I have here, I'll let her introduce herself, but she's one of the most awesome people in the world, I would say. And maybe that's because she's a family, that's the Macoby bias I have, but her name is Megan Baldi. And so I'll let you take it away, Megan.
Hi, everybody. Thank you guys for having me. Thank you, Bubba, for the introduction. It's great having cousins that are passionate about the same things. I work for the Klamath Trinity Resource Conservation District here in Hoopaw. I'm a Hoopaw tribal member, for those of you that don't know me. I do primarily work in the food security, food sovereignty field. And just basically, one of my main passions is teaching people how to cook, teaching people how to preserve foods, teaching people how to gather foods. And it's all about food and how we can become more food secure within our own homes, and then take that mentality and be more food sovereign in our own tribe. And so today, I know we're doing this series of food sovereignty, but I just wanted to kind of break it down on my take of food sovereignty. At one point in Hoopaw, we were totally food secure. We depended on our acorns, our fish, our berries, our roots, our mushrooms, and all of our medicinals. And now we really depend on, other sources of food that are not the same as what we used to have. I know that when we started to try these other foods, we became avid farmers here in the local community. We had ranchers. But today in 2020, there's only 2 ranchers in our community. And then also we have a lot of insecure people that are not really receiving the benefits of how it used to be through food security. To me, that's kind of mind-boggling when we live in an age of technology where you can order a package and they'll be here a couple days later. How we went from just about 50 years ago being super food secure to now, where we have a lot of food insecurities. Back about 50, 60 years ago, especially our elders, they talk about what they used to have. They used to have a cellar that would have like all their apples and pears and everything stored. They would can everything, and they would have basically a canning pantry. And having that mentality of saving food so that they could have it longer. To me, they were more rich in food back then than we are today. And so I really want to bring back that mentality of having that richness of food, because I always say that food security means in your own home, you could at least say that you have 5 days worth of food. Like, I know I'm not going to starve. I have 5 days worth of food. Then food sovereignty is everybody around you in your community have that 5 days worth of food or more. And a lot of the times it might not be yes, that they do not have that 5 days worth of food. So just kind of putting it in that perspective that's what I consider like food security and food sovereignty.
Right on. I think that's like a really awesome definition, and that really it resonates with a lot of our community and with a lot of our employees here at Two Feathers as well. And so that's kind of what motivated us to get, to kind of start this series going, because we see that need. We see the need in our clients, with our families that we're so close with, that we built relationships with. And not only do we see the need in our clients, but sometimes we face that need in our own lives. And yeah. I like to make sure that I eat as much as I can, that I either hunt, fish, or gather. So I try to live that way because it's a little bit easier financially too, not, and then kind of what you're putting into your body, right? And so I like how you address that, though, the difference between food security and food sovereignty, and so we at Two Feathers have been kind of thinking about, how that affects our mental health, right? If you're not able to, like, if you're constantly worried about, like, what am I going to eat, or those kinds of issues, like, or even breaking it down a little bit further of, like, what we are putting into our body and, like, those chemical processes that are happening, and how that affects our brain and our neurobiology, and all of that. I can't go too deep into that, but I just know that there is definitely those kinds of effects, right? And so that's why we kind of wanted to address that. And so I just want to say thank you for joining us. Before we get started, I want to give a big shout out to Mitchell Grove, Glendon Cider Works, and Humboldt Mutual Aid. They have helped us with some donations, so that way we can get some of our participants that are hopefully watching right now. We're going to be able to get you guys some of the supplies that we needed that Megan is going to be using here today. And so that was kind of like, you kind of know who you are if you're one of those people. We can only get so much, but we definitely had a priority list for some of our clients that, we wanted to make sure we can put this into practice, right? And so also let the Facebook community know that this is being recorded right now, and we will post it on our YouTube page if you want to go back and check it out further too. So with that being said, I think if you're ready, Megan, we can go ahead and get started with the applesauce process.
Okay, so I just wanted to share a few things. When a lot of people want to know, like, how do you know, Megan, whether you're going to use a water bath canner or whether you're going to use a pressure canner? And so I wanted to go over why we use what tool that we use. So I'm going to start sharing my screen right now, and then I'm going to pull up this website. So as a master food preserver, I took basically a 6-week course at UC Davis Extension. And through that course, I learned proper and safe canning techniques, and just making sure that I'm using all best practices when I can. The most important thing about canning is that you're going to take this, whatever you put into that jar, and you're going to feed it to your family, and that jar of food is going to be safe. It's not going to have botulism in it. It's not going to have bacteria growth, any of those types of things that could basically give you some sort of food poisoning. And so, in the canning, when it comes to canning, you usually have a water bath canner and you have a pressure canner. And so how you know which ones that you're going to be using for your canning technique, whether you're using water bath or pressure, is the acidic level of either that produce, that meat, or whatever that food is. And so for the acidity level that we're going to be using today, we're using apples. So that's going to be a 4.6 and lower. So if you can see on this website right here, and if you have a chance to write it down, it's the National Center for Home Preservation. You can see the website address on the top. This is a phenomenal website. It has a lot of free recipes on it, but every single one of the recipes that are on this website have been scientifically tested so that they're safe for human consumption. And so if you can read it all over this page, but this is just like, it's called the general canning information. So if like you're on the beginning of the page, you can just look for general information if you want to know any type of safety or any type of food concerns, or even, any type of food poisoning concerns. But I'm going to scroll down here to the food acidity level. And this is what I was talking about, whether you should use a pressure canner or a water bath canner. And basically what that does is the water bath or the pressure canner, they process whatever's in that jar for a certain amount of time so that the core of what is in the middle of that jar has been cooked long enough so that there's no bacteria or botulism or anything in that. So the low acidic foods, basically they are like meats and green beans. They're on a 4.6 and higher. I know that kind of sounds funny, but it goes to like 7.1 in the pH level. So you're going 4.6 to 7. Those are your low acidic foods. That's like your deer meat, your fish, green beans fall under, acorns fall under there. So they don't have as much acidic levels within their whatever it is that they have, either this meat or the food, whatever it is. But then you have your higher acidic level, which is a 4.6 and less. And that's like your fruits, you know, your jalapenos, your apples, and your tomatoes. All those things are higher acidic levels. Sometimes, you know, and this is where it kind of gets tricky, because sometimes you can use a water bath canner for a tomato sauce, or sometimes you have to use a pressure canner. It just depends on the acid level of that food. And so this website's great because, you know, you can look up like spaghetti sauce. And so spaghetti sauce, for instance, you can pressure can it. But then, you know, your salsa, you would water bath can it. So it just kind of helps you to not have to like figure out on your own what those acid levels are, and that you don't have to worry about it. So this website has a great amount of resources on it. So today we're going to be using apples, and we're going to be making applesauce, which is a higher acidic food. And so what we're going to be using the water bath canning method. So I'm going to switch over to the recipe, which is also on the National Center for Home Preservation. And this kind of gives you the breakdown of what you're going to be using, and it's super simple. This recipe is like one of the most simplest recipes out there, because it's just basically just grinding up your apples into sauce. These ones, they just call for you to add a certain amount of sugar, but you don't need to add a whole bunch of sugar, which is great. So a lot of times when we are canning, the preservative is either sugar and a lot of these jams, jellies, or any type of fruits, or it is salt. And so for this one, you can actually add as much sugar as you want, or, you know, as less sugar as you want. You don't really have to put too much sugar in there, but you do need to have sugar in there. You want sugar to taste. Turn those apples off. So it says basically we're going to go over the recipe, because this is really important when you're canning. Is, I can't stress this enough, is to follow the recipe as best as you can. And the reason being is because, like I said, you want to be able to take that food and give it to your family and not have to worry about that food having any type of bacteria, botulism, any type of foodborne illness that you don't want your family to come into contact with. So this one says about 21 pounds per canner load, but basically it's however many apples you want to do with this recipe. It's, you know, I say follow the recipe, but this one is really, really simple, because you're not adding anything to your apples until you put it into the jar, then you can add your sugar. So it says you can select apples that are sweet, juicy, or crispy. If you want to add tart apples, if you want to add sweeter apples, you know, whatever you like to eat for applesauce, you can totally go for whatever, which one of apples. I have a Gravenstein apple, and just basically, it's just any apple that's out and available in the community. You can use that. So it says that, on the procedure, you wash and peel and core your apples, which I have an apple corer, which makes my life 10 times more easier to do, because you're basically just rolling it through the pillar, and that pillar cores it and it cuts it up and everything in one. So I just throw all those apples into my sauce pot. And then it says you can add ascorbic acid. And it's just like, you can find it. I don't have any with me, but it's like it comes in like a ball box, and you can just look for like a ball or curve brand box. You can look for ascorbic acid. That just prevents your apples from browning. If you don't want them to be more brown, you want them to be more light, you can add that acidic or the ascorbic acid to it. So once the apples have been sliced and put into a pot, you add a little bit of water, and then you heat really quickly until it becomes really soft and really basically falls kind of apart and all that. Then you want to press it through a food sieve. This is an older way to do it. Basically, you take like a cheesecloth and you take a sieve and you just kind of mush around your apples in that, and then your sauce comes out. But today we're going to use a sauce maker. They also have other ways that you can do it. You can use a hand crank food mill. You can put these apples in a blender, and it all depends on you. You can sieve it if you want. You don't have to do that. You can just kind of mash it up with a potato masher if you don't have anything else. Because you can have it chunkier. It doesn't have to be like this whole mushed up apple. You can definitely have a chunkier. And this is what I was talking about. If you're following along under the procedure, if you look, kind of almost to the end, it says sauce may be packed with or without sugar. So, this is a really cool recipe, because if you have elders too that have to have lower sugar, or just, people that are not able to have too much sugar because they're diabetic, you can actually use the natural sugars within the apples and do your applesauce. So it's really cool about this recipe. So I'm just gonna show you after we do all that, and we ladle into the jars. If you can look, we're gonna do the hot pack, and there's a pints and there's a quarts on the screen. And then you can see the process time of this altitude in this table 1. You're gonna see it says 0 to 1,000 feet, 1,000 to 3,000 feet, 3,000 to 6,000 feet, and then above 6,000. What that means is your altitude, you have to adjust your time. So for pints, which we're gonna use today, it's a 15-minute processing time. That means after I fill these jars up, I'm gonna put them in the water bath canner, and once that water bath canner comes up to a full rolling boil, I'm going to start the timer for 15 minutes. Now, if I was above 1,000 feet, then I would do that timer for 20 minutes, and then so on and so on. And so the most important point to this is that the processing time, you have to boil your whatever, your applesauce in that canner for an entire 15 minutes. Say your canner's kind of going off crazy and there's water spilling everywhere, and you turn your canner down and the boiling stops, and you come over and you're like, oh no, the boiling stopped. You have to actually bring that canner back up to a rolling boil and start your 15 minutes over again. So you don't want to do that. So you want to keep that rolling boil, and you want to keep an eye on that, because you don't want to have to restart. Like if you had 2 minutes left on your 15 minutes and you let the boil go down, you would have to restart. Okay. So now I'm going to switch over to Emily, and I'm going to stop the broadcast on here, and we're going to start the recipe after we went over that. Let's see. Okay, so I'm going to go over the makeup of your jar. So this is basically how a jar is. This is a pint jar. This is the base of the jar. This is the headspace of the jar. So every recipe calls for a different type of headspace. If you can see the headspace, you go over to the middle of that jar, that's the half headspace. Then you go to the end of that little ridge right there where you put the lid on. That's 3/4 of an inch headspace and 1 inch headspace. Every recipe calls for headspace, and that's how you kind of eye it out. They do have like a headspace measurer tool if you ever want. This is your lid and your ring of your jar, and on every lid there's a gasket. That is what seals on your jar, and that's what keeps your food good for a long time. And then they have the rings. Now the ring you can use again, but the lid is a one-time use lid. You have lids out there, they're called Tadler lids, and you can reuse them time and time and time again. So basically that's just the makeup of your jar. And then we also have our tools. So when you're doing, especially when you're doing like fruit sauces, jams, or jellies, you'll want to have this funnel because they get so messy, and then also like the sugar and the stickiness will build up around the rim of that jar. And so this funnel helps is prevent that buildup of that sugar and stickiness around your jar so that your seal will not be compromised. We also have a ladle. This is a cool ladle. I like this one because it like basically sits on the side, scrapes around, but you can use a regular ladle. We have the jar lifter, and it's like a debubbler. So like just mainly you'll use this debubbler when you're doing like whole tomatoes or just like whole pears, whole peaches. And basically you're trying to get all the air out of your jar or of your fruit product so that it doesn't have a lot of air trapped in it. It also has a magnet at the end of it, and that's how you can get your lid and your ring out of the hot boiling water. So what I did with my jars and my lids and rings was I sanitized them. I washed their brand new jars, but even your old jars, I washed in a dish soap with a little bit of bleach in there, and then I also boiled them, and then I also boiled the lids of those jars in my pot. Here we have the juicer. Now this is a pretty fancy juicer that we bought, not a juicer, but a saucer. And basically you just feed the hopper right here with all your apples and all the sauce pops out. Over here we have a saucepan, which this is what it calls for. A lot of times it'll say what size saucepan that you should use. I like to use a taller saucepan when I'm doing any type of fruit product, but mainly when I'm doing jams and jellies, because sometimes the foam will start to build up here, and if it's a shorter pot like this, the foam will boil over and then you'll have a huge mess. Over here is our canner. So this canner is a stainless steel canner, and basically it's perfect. I like the stainless steel. If you remember back in the day, if you ever came to your grandma's house or you seen an old canner, they used to have these enamel counters that were really just pure black, and basically they had those white speckles over it with the lid on the top, and basically those were the old style canners. For me, my flat top cooker, I can't use those type of canners on here because it has ridges at the bottom of it. And so with those ridges, it won't evenly heat and it won't evenly process right. So I have to use the stainless steel canner. Basically the canner is pretty basic, it's just a big pot, comes with a rack in there. You need the rack so that it prevents your jar from hitting against the bottom of the pan. And then it also has a lid. It has a gauge on this lid, but I've never used it. I just watch for it to boil. And that's the makeup of my canner. So we purchased these apples from O'Gorman Farms, and basically they're just regular old grabbing apple, just an apple core, which if you they make your life so much easier. You just pull it back, push your apple onto it, twist it, it comes out like this, already cored and already cut up, really nice and easy. And then the core stays on there, and you pull it back, comes right off. Makes your life so much simpler to have one of those. So the recipes call for 21 pounds of apples, but basically however many apples that you can do. All you do is you put your apples in a pot, and then you put a little bit of water so that the apples don't constantly until they're nice and mushy. As you can see, kind of what you want. And now what we're going to do is we're going to start saucing it. If you guys have any questions, please ask questions. Bubba can let me know if whatever your questions might be, so that we can, if you missed anything, you can tell us, or if you have a question about any of the processing, feel free to ask at any time. Also, if we're cutting in and out and the internet is like buffering, just know that we only have like AT&T internet here, which is wireless, so it's not as reliable, but we're going to try to do our best with, you know, making sure that we kind of repeat a lot of the steps so that you know that you'll catch it.
We do have a question, Megan.
Okay, so go for it.
Christina Fiore wanted to know if any other spices added to the mix, such as cinnamon or nutmeg, if that affects the cooking time or any part of the process.
No, so spices don't affect any of the cooking time or any of the process steps. So like I said, with applesauce, it's really cool because you can add different things to it. It's not like you don't have to add certain amounts of sugar. You can have it plain when you process it, but you know, you'll find recipes out there that require certain ingredients in it, but this one, it doesn't. So like if you wanted to use brown sugar instead of the white sugar, if you want to put a little cinnamon in there or whatever you might want, you can just throw it in there. And you can throw it in jar by jar. So once you get your sauce made, you can throw in each jar what you want in there. So I didn't put any sugar or anything into it. I'm just basically boiling the apples with just a little bit of water. So we're gonna start the saucer. Basically, you just feed it in the hopper and it'll start coming out. It's gonna have a lot of water in there, but don't worry about that, because once you start getting more and more in there, it's just gonna start coming out. So you can come over to this side. You can see all that sauce coming out of that thing. This thing is awesome. It just makes your life so much easier. It just basically just does all the hard work for you. And all you gotta do is really just feed it. These things are they run about $100 or more. I personally have a saucer that hooks onto my KitchenAid and does the exact same thing, but this is how I do my tomato sauce, my spaghetti sauce, is I'll just feed it in a saucer. The cool thing about tomato sauce or spaghetti sauce is like you can put the whole tomato in here, and as you can see, all this stuff that's coming out this end right here, it's all like peelings and just basically leftover stuff that the apple you don't really need in your sauce, so it comes out right there. And the same with the like the tomatoes, you don't have to slip your tomatoes if you have a saucer. You don't have to take the skin off of them. Any more questions?
Not as of right now, I don't see.
Okay. So one cool thing about like making your own applesauce is like Koopa, if you live here, we have an abundance of apple trees. And like I said, this thing basically spits out all the no good stuff. But even if you had to cut and mash on your own, there's so many apples out there that are just laying on the ground, and this is just such an easy way to get you know, this good food into your diet, but it's also a free resource. Free food. And that's a good part of food security. You know, I have, if not all of you know, but I know a lot of you know me, I have 6 kids. And so feeding these 6 kids is a lot of money. So what I do is we try to source out a lot of our food. Like if we like jams, you know, with peanut butter and jelly, we make our own jam. You know, whether we love bacon, we love pork, we love any type of sausage, anything like that, we raise our own pigs. So we try to do things where it's not so much of a huge cost on our family to feed our family. So we're almost done feeding this guy all up. It's a little bit of time, and they got nice and soft.
It's going really fast.
Yeah, I'm gonna show you guys. So I'm gonna leave that sauce right there, but I'm gonna show you guys, like, you can mash it up too.
The rice is over there.
So this is a rice masher. This is gonna mash it up really nice and small. So you can just basically put some of it in here in a bowl, not in this particular bowl, it doesn't have to be, but you can take your rice masher and just kind of mash it up. This is just, you don't have a saucer, or if you don't have a blender or anything like that, you can just do this with your applesauce. As you can see, it's already just like that. It's made into applesauce. Super simple, super easy. So we're gonna finish this off. Hopefully finish this bowl. One thing that you want to do though while you're grabbing out your apples is try to drain as much of the liquid off as you can while you're doing it. You could even put the apples in a strainer if you want your applesauce to be really nice and thick. You could also do this with pears or Asian pears.
So we have a question from your neighbor, Mr. Bum Bum, Chance the Fourth. He wanted to know if you have any suggested uses for the pulp once it's separated, and like all that kind of stuff that's going out into that bowl right there.
You could actually add a little bit of sugar to it if you want to, and then you could do like a fruit leather with it, which is basically you would take this pulp and you would flatten it out on and dehydrate it to make fruit leather, or
Feed it to your pigs.
feed it to your pigs. That's what we do. So all that is done. This is what we have left over. Now, with these saucers, like I could have probably just left the apple peelings on and the seeds in it, and it would have just spit it all out. But I already had the apple core, so I went that way with it.
Extra.
The sauce is hot. These things are really cool because they're not too hard to clean as well. You just take them apart and you just throw them in this sink and wash them right up. And you can see the makeup of it is basically, this is what they basically is the regular sieve. You just used to push your apples or your berries all the way through like that. But this one is just like basically it's doing it for you with this crank coming through like the spiral, and it just spits it all out. And this basically just comes right off after you unlock it, and you just wash it up, and pretty easy, simple. I like to can food. That's one of my passions, and I like doing it. But I like to can and do things quicker too. So like if I can make my life easier with a tool, which is this saucer, or I have the saucer that connects my KitchenAid. If I can make my life easier, I tend to go that way. So, feel free to ask any kind of questions.
Yeah, it's always good to invest in yourself a little bit, kind of, it's hard sometimes, but it's a good feeling when you can kind of get those things that you need to, like you said, to make your life easier.
Exactly, especially like if you want canning to be a driving thing in your home for food security, like investing in the tools that's going to make your life easier. Because sometimes people get put off by the amount of time it takes to do some of these procedures, you know. And so, like, if you can make it easier, it's not as hard.
It's gonna pay for itself in the
It'll
long run.
pay for itself in the long run. There's my spoon in there.
That's an excellent way to look at it. It will definitely pay for yourself. Pay for itself. I made some chicken broth the other night out of because I usually buy the whole chickens, right? Because it's a little bit cheaper, $5 or $6 for a whole chicken.
Yeah.
And then, I get 2 or 3 meals because it's just me and my partner. So we get 2 or 3 meals out of the meat. And then I use the bones to make a broth, and I can get, 9 or 10 quarts out of those. And those are like $5 or $6 a piece themselves, a quart of chicken broth.
Yeah.
So, I turned that $6 chicken into like $80 worth of supply of
Yeah.
So yeah, it definitely does. These kind of things do pay for themselves in the long run.
Yeah. And it's like you're just starting out, like some of the people that are part of the program and that were able to sign up, we're going to help. The Climate Trinity Resource Conservation District is going to give out the water bath canners to 10 of those recipients. And so, like, if you're starting out and you have that canner and you start making blackberry jam or whatever, you can sell that to buy your equipment, buy your tools, and just kind of keep going forward. Okay, I really like that saucer. Let me set a goal to sell this much jams or jellies until I can get that saucer.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my sugar at the bottom so it mixes better before I put my applesauce in there. And I'm putting a 4th cup of sugar in here because I'm going to add a little bit of brown sugar as well. And these are all pint jars. So the pints are going to take about 15 minutes to process in our processor.
iPad's so weird to hold.
I know. This is just going to take a little bit of time. Now, if you do not want to add this much sugar, by all means, add what you want. This is the great thing about applesauce. It doesn't have to be a precise amount of sugar for this recipe. I'm just going to add a little bit of brown sugar just for some taste.
Some flavor.
Not too much, but enough.
You're gonna add cinnamon?
Yeah, I'm going to add cinnamon too. Try not to get around my rim. Okay. Then I got cinnamon and add a little bit of it in each one. Sprinkle a little bit.
Just guesstimating.
Yeah. You don't really have to measure this. This is the great thing about this recipe. Other recipes, they're going to call for different things.
They're way more strict.
And so you just got to be cautious of what you're doing. Like I said, that website, the National Center for Home Preservation, a lot of those recipes on there have been, well, not a lot, all of them have been scientifically tested. And that though if you follow those directions, they're safe for your family to eat. I'm going to ladle in my applesauce up to the 1 inch or 1/4 inch headspace, sorry. Oh, it smells good already.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I didn't even put sugar in it in the beginning. But you can see the applesauce is nice and thick. It's already applesauce. Now those out there with babies, super simple, super easy way to get some applesauce for your baby.
Baby food.
Yep. Especially like if you're low on baby food or something and you need to make some baby food fast, all you got to do is have a masher and some apples, peel and core them, and here you got baby food for baby.
Babies are expensive.
If they are. And so I did about, I would say, about 10 pounds of apples for this recipe. And so it's gonna make about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pints.
It smells really good. Because we made it.
So this is a really great thing about the spoon, is you see I can, and it has that little lip, easier to get stuff out. I'm gonna take a little spoon and just mix it around just a little bit so that the sugar and the brown sugar get mixed into the applesauce all the way, so that you don't have this crusty amount of sugar at the bottom of your apples when you open it. So you just want to mix it all around.
I don't think it would have been easier to mix it all on there together.
You can, but it doesn't call for you to do that, so I just did it this way.
Like, it's a lot more work.
So you can see that one's nice and pretty.
Mix. Smells really good. I want apple pie now.
I know. We'll make some apple pie with some of this applesauce. Sugar out of the way. Pulp out of the way. You can see all that sugar at the bottom. Like Emily said, if you wanted it to be easier, you can just add it to taste what you want it in the bowl, you know. We can smile with your fingers.
Why do you expose me like that?
So if you guys have any questions, a good time to ask while I'm stirring this up.
Yeah, there is a question. Once it's all canned up, how long is the shelf life? How long will this last?
Generally 2 years. And with anything, whether it's fish or applesauce or whatever, the golden rule is 2 years. But I honestly think that if you can't eat this in 2 years, it's pretty bad. You know, you should be eating this as much as you're making it. So generally 2 years, but I think you should eat it faster than that.
Yeah, I put dates on my things, but I don't think I've ever had jars that haven't, I haven't eaten up or given away or whatever, you know what I mean? But
yeah, because you don't want it to sit around, want it to be eaten, I've heard of stories of people like that went into their grandparents or somebody's cellar, and they had all these jars in there with food in it, but the top of the lids were all like rusted out or had holes in it. So you don't want to keep your food around that long. But generally 2 years. But also a good visual tell, like if you have this applesauce and like say you've seen some green on the top of it, say you've seen some like bubbling or something, and then when you opened it, it was foul, it's not good. So if you're like, it's been a little longer than 2 years, is this going to be safe? If you don't see any of those telltale signs and you don't smell, rancid food smells. And so if it doesn't smell bad, it should be fine. Okay, so for this step, I always get like a wet paper towel, and then I just go around the top of my rim of my jar and just kind of wipe it down to get all the excess fruit or sugar that's on the top.
So that it doesn't compromise the seal.
Yeah, so that it doesn't compromise the seal. Now, this one is not hot, this sauce right now, because we boiled it and we put it through and it's had a lot of time to cool down. But if you're doing jams and jellies and like you're watching me and I'm like just like going around this jar without any problem, don't do that, because like my fingertips just don't feel the heat sensitivity like the rest of people's fingertips might. So just be cautious if it's hot. When you're doing this, use like a mitt or something so that you don't burn yourself. And then we got our lids.
once you do it, so once you kind of build up a tolerance to it, huh? with your
Yeah,
fingertips.
you do. Especially, your fingertips just end up being really tough then, like alligator skin fingertips. So what you want to do with your lid in your ring is you want to go all the way till it meets that point of resistance right there, and then you want to do a little bit, click over. You don't want to ever wrench your lid or your cap on, because then that helps make it where it just gets stuck on. Then you have to have, like, the Hulk come in and open it for you.
I'm Hulk.
Emily's the Hulk in our family. Really cool thing about this tool is, like I said, it's got this magnet at the end, but it also prevents you from really touching the lid, where that seal is. This will help prevent you from having to touch that, because there are oils on your fingers that, if they got in between that, the rim of the jar and that ring, that seal on that lid, it could actually not seal right.
You don't want that.
Okay, so we got, this one didn't go on. We got all of our lids and rings on. We got our processor nice and heated up. One thing I forgot to mention, which is one of the most important tools ever, you cannot can without it. It is a jar lifter, and basically it is what it says it is. You lift up, put it in, take it out. Now, I always like to tell people you got to be like kind of robotic when you're putting your jars into the processor, because if you tip this, you don't want that applesauce to get underneath your lid and compromise your seal. So I'm just going to load them into the canner. You want to come to this side, Emily?
Yeah, that's where I'm going.
Owie. And once it's loaded in, you want to just do your best that you can do while loading these in here without tipping them. But sometimes they just tip on their own, because it is a wire rack down there, so you really got to do your best to not tip it. Now, the general rule with your water bath canner is that you want to have at least 1 inch of water covering your jars at all times. This has got a little bit more than 1 inch, but you definitely want to have it covering your jars. So recommend it, like if you're starting to do a lot of sets at one time, and then you have a lot of moisture that's been evaporated or boiled out. If you keep a pot of boiling water next to your canner, you can add that water in so that it won't basically, mess up your processing time. And like I said before, this is a 15-minute processing time, so I'm going to keep it on high. And once it rolling boil, so like you can see, it's not really boiling yet. But once it comes to that rolling, vigorous boil, I'm going to start my 15-minute timer, and then I'm just going to let it boil until that timer goes off, and then I'm going to take out the jars and then set them aside. But basically, for me personally, I don't ever turn this down. Like, not the water bath canner, pressure canner. I'm over there adjusting the heat and temperature all the time. But for my water bath canner, I do not ever turn it down, because I don't want to compromise my processing time. And like I said before, you want to make sure that you're getting into the core, which is the middle of your jar, long enough to kill any type of bacteria. So, these recipes that are scientifically tested, this applesauce recipe says that if you're below 1,000 feet and you process your applesauce for 15 minutes, anything in the core of that applesauce will be foodborne illness free. So if you guys have any questions while we're waiting for this, feel free to ask at any time.
Yeah, I have a couple from the comments. One is once it is canned and you're ready to store it in your pantry, do you want to keep that lid on, like the ring on, or do you want to take that off?
So ideally, you should take them off, especially like in homes like in our area, because of the temperature, it fluctuates. Sometimes it's like 100 degrees here, and sometimes it's like 110 degrees here. And sometimes, you know, if your jar gets hot enough, it'll unseal and reseal. So with that ring on there, on it, you know, nice and tight, and then it reseals, and you didn't some sort of foodborne, you know, illness or get bacteria in there, because air is where bacteria grows from the oxygen in the air. And so you're trying to keep that out when you're canning. So if that heat level got so hot where it unsealed, and it will reseal, which is crazy to me. You'll want to make sure that you take your rings off. If you're like me, where you have like 200 million of these rings laying all around your house, it just kind of becomes like the drawer of, you know, since like that's all you have in that drawer. Or where it's nice and loose on your jar. So like you just have it just really nice, not even really wrenched onto your jar, just loose, and it won't, and you can tell if it'll seal and unseal.
Nice, that's good to know. Thank you, thank you. And we have another question that asks about apple pie filling, if that is a different process than this applesauce, and how so?
Yeah, it is a different process, and you can look it up on that website. I don't have it in front of me right now to kind of like, let me see, where's my phone at, Emily? We can kind of look at what the difference is, but I'm sure it's just like the boiling of the apples together with the fruit and stuff before you put it into the jar. But the website that I showed you guys you should be able to find that on there. And I'm going to look real quick for you. So we're almost to a rolling boil, as you can see. Once it really starts boiling, which is about now, I will start the 15-minute timer.
We have one more question too. What are some, you've talked about this website as a great resource. Do you have any other resources that you've utilized for somebody that's, you know, just getting started?
Let me start my timer up. 15 minutes. So yeah, you can get like the Ball cookbooks, Ball or Kerr cookbooks. A couple of the cookbooks though, they were recalled. I think it was 2018's Ball cookbook. So there was some recipe in there that basically was not okay, or something happened there. But what I usually do is I usually use this website. But when I got through with the Master Food Preserver course, they gave me a book during that course. It's called So Easy to Preserve. And that book, it's a great book. If you can find it and you can buy it, usually, I think they have a website called So Easy to Preserve. You can buy it on there, or you can buy it on Amazon, but it has basically every single type of preservation technique. So it's got fermenting of foods, dehydrating of foods, water bath canning, pressure canning, and freezing. So if you're looking for a resource that has a lot of the just all types of food preservation, I would suggest that resource.
Yeah, that's my favorite one as well. I got that book at a canning workshop at Potawatomi when I was working under the Good Health and Wellness in Indian Country grant through the CDC. And so I will pull that up real quick and share it for everybody. Here's the book. You can see here it's $20, which is pretty affordable. And yeah, it's through the University of Georgia. And so like Megan said, that's that's what the UC extension here in Humboldt County uses too. So yeah, this is one of my recommendations as well here.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal resource, especially like if you're just trying to figure out, you know, something without having to go to the course or whatever. But they do offer the food preservation master food preserver course every February, I believe. And so that's a good place to just like if you want to a resource and you want to learn from a lot of really dynamic teachers in Humboldt County. It's offered on the coast in Eureka. I think it's at the Humboldt Hill Ag Center, and it's a 6-week course, but it's awesome. So I know we're getting down on our minutes. So if you guys have any more questions or concerns before we're done, I know I got about 13 minutes left, but I won't make you guys hang on that long.
Well, I'm not seeing any new questions. We'll hang on for a minute or two just in case some stragglers want to ask something. But in the meantime, I just want to give a huge shout out to you, Megan, and to Emily too for your amazing videography skills here today. You know, it's really awesome that you guys took time out of your day and are willing to get your kitchen and get your house hot, nice and hot too during the. Because I know how that goes. You know, once that cannon is rolling, man, it can really heat up your house, especially if you're doing multiple loads.
Yep.
So I appreciate you guys in taking your time. Oh, it looks like we do have a question. How is canning important to food sovereignty in you guys's?
Well, I think that canning in general, food sovereignty, but I think also the overall preservation of foods is important. You know, if you have a large family, so we prep for the entire year of food, you know, so we're thinking, okay, we want to put up this much deer meat in cans. We want to put this much fish in jars. We want to put this much jams in jars, you know, so that we have it all year long, but also have that extra to share with our family, our community, our elders, you know. So it's super important to me that I can, but it also is really and preserve my indigenous foods. I think that you know, having our indigenous foods, especially my kids, they're the next generation, right? If they love their foods that this place provides for them, that the creator has provided for them, they're going to do everything in their power to preserve and take care of that resource, because they have that love of that food.
For sure, I think that that's a big piece for me as well. You know, is that just that connection to the land and connection to the place. You know, and to the water too. You know, speaking of fish and eels and things like that. It's a way to, you know, make that, for me, it's a way to make that food last, you know. Like I had a good eeling year this year, for example, and you know, I was able to store up a lot of them, you know, through the canning process. And also kind of like what you mentioned too about sharing, you know, because that's a big part for me as a person who does those things, who hunts, who fishes, who gathers. You know, my uncle, you know, Awak, my uncle Chetty, you know, he's the one that kind of got me started on a lot of this path, you could say. And that was like one big thing that he like instilled in me, is to like, that's my responsibility as somebody who does this, to give it out to the community, to my family, to, you know, the ones that I love and respect, you know. And so you're able, when you preserve it, when you can it, you're able, for me, you know, you're able to like to make it last longer, you know. And it's nice to give people fresh food too, you know, fresh fish, fresh deer meat or whatever. But if you can it up, you can give it to them and they don't have to like worry about like, oh, I gotta cook it right now. You know what I mean? Like they can put it in their pantry and have it and eat it next week or, you know, in a month or whatever the case is.
I think that's super, that point you just made is super important to our elders because it's hard for our elders to cut up an entire fish or to cut up a big chunk of deer meat. You know, they're just, and to not only cut it up, but to consume it, you know, they can't consume it so much. So they really do appreciate the canned goods because they can, you know, eat it as they need it and then it's there for them. So I think that's a great example of why we should preserve and give it out because, you know, there are elders out there that love those foods, but they just necessarily cannot just gather or hunt or even cut up those foods anymore.
Yep. We have another question. Danielle is wanting to know what the what the name of your apple processor was.
Let me get that. Emily, can you give me the that? Can you just throw that dog down? Give me the box right there, so I can see what it show people what it is. Just put it up right here. So it's a Ball Fresh Tech Harvest Pro sauce maker. So it's just basically all it is just a sauce maker. You know, I think it also shreds cheese and stuff like that. But yeah, it's like pretty awesome. But if you, let's say you can't afford a whole saucer, but you have a KitchenAid or something, they actually have a sauce attachment that you can get for your KitchenAid. I think it's like $30 on Amazon.
Oh, nice. Right on. Well, I think that does it for the questions. And so I just want to say thank you again. You know, I really appreciate you guys. And I want to let everybody in the audience know that, you know, this is part one. We're going to go forward and we'll do a meat processing one at one point. And then I know we have plans to do like kind of more of a panel type talk, you know, about and bringing in some more community members that, you know, what this food sovereignty means to them. So yeah, stay tuned and look forward to what we have coming up. And we look forward to working with you, cousin.
All right. Thank you, cuz. Appreciate it.
Right on. Have a great day, everybody, and a great weekend.
Bye. Thank you, guys.